Zion looked a little heavy. We can't put you on the floor like this because it may cause you to injure something else.
Played 114 games in 4 seasons, a condition that is just endemic to the Pelicans.
I haven't seen this guy healthy for a full season.
I think you will get tank right there.
I hate that this is happening to Zion Williamson. I mean, I really can't even begin to express my frustration. As a fan of basketball, I'm not even a New Orleans Pelicans fan, and I can only imagine how the front office of the Pelicans organization feels about this. So let's just get to it, man. Before we get to the content, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications to help the channel grow. Now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. Some of the green slips you guys have been sending me is crazy. Like $1,250 off of a $250 slip, or $1,500 off of a $150 power play. We've been making bank off of our basketball picks, bro. March Madness was a huge success, and believe me, we're about to ramp it up for the NBA playoffs. All you have to do is download Prize Picks, use my promo code microphone, and they'll match your first deposit up to $100 instantly. After that, just follow me on Instagram. I post all of my picks onto my Instagram story for free, and we can start making money off of these picks together. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? The 2019 NBA draft was considered to be one of those drafts that was relatively easy if you were able to secure the #1 overall pick. We spent the entire season seeing Zion Williamson consistently get photoshopped into every one of the teams that were in the lottery of that NBA draft, or all the teams that clearly weren't going to make it to the NBA playoffs. Mostly the New York Knicks, I'm going to be honest. I saw so many New York Knicks jersey swaps for Zion Williamson. He was supposed to be the savior of the Knicks. Remember that? You remember there was this one particular Photoshop of Zion Williamson, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant in a Knicks jersey? Yeah, those were some good times. But regardless, the entire 2019 lottery was perceived as the Zion Williamson sweepstakes. I mean, when the New Orleans Pelicans got the #1 overall pick, he saw Zion Williamson look very conflicted about how he felt about the situation. Nothing against the Pelicans, but I'm assuming that he saw a lot of the New York Knicks jersey swaps at that point, and I guess he got a little excited as a result of it. But regardless, we all agree there wasn't even any thought whatsoever to not selecting Zion Williamson with the #1 overall pick. Hell, at the time, the Pelicans still had Anthony Davis on the roster, and they were considering trading Anthony Davis to whoever got the #1 overall pick in that draft straight up. I don't necessarily know if that would have worked out, but at the end of the day, the greatest possible scenario that was even conceivable for the New Orleans Pelicans ended up happening. They were able to not only retain Anthony Davis, but they also got the #1 overall pick in that NBA draft, which means not only did they get the opportunity to select Zion Williamson with the #1 overall pick, but that also meant that they were able to trade their previous franchise cornerstone, Anthony Davis, to the Los Angeles Lakers for a truly generational package in return. I mean, for those of you guys that don't remember the Anthony Davis trade, allow me to remind you, because the package for Anthony Davis was legitimately insane. And it's not to say it wasn't worth it, because I think it worked out for both sides. The Los Angeles Lakers traded Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, 3 future first-round picks, and 1 additional pick swap. Not to mention multiple of those picks ended up in the lottery for the Los Angeles Lakers, and in return the Lakers were able to get Anthony Davis. The Lakers won a NBA championship as a result of this trade. I don't care if you consider it to be a Mickey Mouse ring or whatever. Historically, we're going to commemorate the Los Angeles Lakers as the 2020 NBA champions as a result of this trade, whereas the New Orleans Pelicans built one of the best cores that you could have even imagined building around Zion Williamson. I'm not gonna lie, at the time, myself and my good friend Get Like Coop, make sure you check him out. He's a diehard Pelicans fan. We had a history of talking trash to one another over the past decade. This all stems back from when the Lakers traded for Chris Paul. I went on Facebook and I talked a lot of trash to Get Like Coop about this, and the trade got vetoed, and then we started having like this little rivalry with one another as a result of it. So when this trade occurred, I said the Lakers won the trade, and Coop said that the Pelicans won the trade. And I honestly, as time went on, I started believing Coop. I mean, Brandon Ingram's a remarkable player in his own right. Lonzo Ball is a prototypical classic point guard that could easily run the offense for any team and plays very ferocious defense. He does everything you could ever ask for from a point guard. Josh Hart is a remarkable role player. Even today, every time he's been traded for a pretty good package on the receiving end. And then you bring in the lottery picks as well. I actually thought the Lakers lost this trade. And then the most unfortunate stuff that could have happened ended up happening. One, Lonzo Ball would leave to the Chicago Bulls, and currently his career is in jeopardy as a result of his injury problems. Brandon Ingram has been solid as hell. And then you have Zion Williamson, who at the time I'm recording this video, in the first 4 years of his career, has played in 114 games. That's about a season and 30 games worth of games played in the first 4 years of his career. There, of course, were weight issues with Zion Williamson when he got into the league. There was also concerns about him sustaining an injury that could alter the trajectory of his career, like a torn Achilles or a torn ACL. That could ruin his career. And the Pelicans were very cautious to make sure that that didn't end up happening. As they sat Zion Williamson out throughout the first 3 years of his career, they were very focused on building the best team that they possibly could around Zion Williamson. My favorite trade being the fact that they were able to trade for CJ McCollum of the Portland Trail Blazers. Of course, there was some controversy about Zion Williamson being injured and not reaching out to CJ McCollum to welcome him to the team. Of course, Zion also blamed that on the fact that he himself was going through it because he was getting frustrated with all the injuries and all the time he spent out of playing games. Now, if you want to make a comparison, Ja Morant, who completely took the Grizzlies basketball program and made it one of the top teams in the NBA, has played in 247 games. So that's more than double the amount of games that Zion Williamson has played in as the number 2 overall pick. And the thing that is probably the most frustrating is it's not like Zion Williamson is a generational bust. You can't even compare him to Greg Oden. Greg Oden was pretty solid when he played for the Portland Trail Blazers, but he wasn't as dominant as Zion Williamson is right now. When Zion Williamson does play, the New Orleans Pelicans are a top 3 team in the West. Yes, earlier on this season you saw it yourself. I know it sounds weird. I know it sounds odd, but that's the reality. They were able to rank atop the top 3 in the Western Conference when Zion Williamson was playing. That's the problem. He hasn't been playing. It's like the New Orleans Pelicans have this remarkable core around this once-in-a-generation superstar, and yet this superstar can't play. It seems like each and every year, it's the same story. Every single year, come playoff time, the New Orleans Pelicans look primed to make a huge run. But the problem is, it seems like each and every year, Zion Williamson is injured around this time. And it's very frustrating when you consider how the Pelicans were able to finish last year. They gave the Golden State Warriors a run for their money. They played intense, ferocious defense on the would-be NBA champions last year. One only could imagine what would happen if Zion Williamson was there. But alas, he wasn't there. He only played in 29 games this season before he was ruled out with a hamstring injury. And now the question was whether or not Zion Williamson would be able to recover in time to play for the New Orleans Pelicans in this year's playoffs, or hell, even this year's play-in. And well, it seems like we have an update on the situation. Yesterday, we had David Griffin say that based on today, our best possible outcome would be if everything lined up perfectly, maybe you're in a position to practice prior to the first round, maybe during the first round. But it's going to take more than one, right? It's really hard. We may never get to that point either. If it's not a situation where those things align and he feels the way he needs to feel, we're not going to let him go to the next phase. So when I originally heard this, I thought that there was very little to no chance that Zion Williamson would play because he's played in 29 games this season, and then you want to throw him to the wolves when the games get infinitely more intense. You can't even compare regular season basketball to playoff basketball. It's the reason why a lot of top seeds in the NBA end up falling out of the NBA playoffs within the first 2 rounds. It's the reason why the Denver Nuggets have the reputation they have, unfortunately. There's a lot of teams like this that dominate in the regular season, and then they get into the NBA playoffs, and then they're just not able to keep it up. I mean, most famously probably the Utah Jazz of a couple years ago when they were able to get the top seed in the Western Conference, and they weren't able to make it to the Western Conference Finals as a result of Tyronn Lue and the Los Angeles Clippers out-coaching Quinn Snyder and the Utah Jazz. You know what I'm talking about, the famous 41-point game from Terrence Mann. But I digress. yes, the reason I'm bringing this up is the very next day, we got news saying that after further evaluation, it has been determined that Zion Williamson will continue his rehabilitation and conditioning regimen. We will continue to monitor his progression and updates will be provided as. Now, this brings us to the most recent news we got, and it's not news that Pelicans fans wanted. It's not news that any NBA fan wants, to be honest. And I'm a Laker fan. I'm in the Western Conference. The weaker the Western Conference teams are, the greater chance my Lakers are able to make a push. I'm all for it, especially considering the fact that the way the standings are looking now, it looks like the Lakers and the Pelicans are in the play-in, so they might see each other in the play-in. Now, according to Shams Charania, Pelican star Zion Williamson, who has been sidelined since January 2nd with a hamstring strain, is unlikely to return to action in next week's play-in tournament. Sources tell The Athletic and the Stadium the team has been cautious with Zion Williamson's comeback as he continues the rehab process. Yeah, it gets a little worse. A few hours later, Pelicans would straight up rule out Zion Williamson for the play-in tournament, and his status is also in doubt for the start of a potential playoff berth as well. So it looks like the supporting cast of the New Orleans Pelicans is going to have to go into the play-in and the playoffs without Zion Williamson. It's the same exact situation as last year, and it's so unfortunate. I mean, I'm not necessarily a doctor. I dropped out of my biomed program to pursue YouTube content, but it seems to me that a huge issue could be potentially Zion Williamson's weight. Maybe if he was able to get a little bit lighter, maybe there'd be less stress on his legs and he'd be able to play more games. That's a strategy that a lot of NBA players usually utilize at the latter part of their career. Most famously, LeBron James, when he returned to the Cleveland Cavaliers for his second stint, he had a bunch of pictures go viral online. The amount of weight he lost going from the Miami Heat to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I'm sure a lot of people have theories as to how he lost so much weight in that short of a time. That could be a potential solution. Another solution could be just moving on from Zion Williamson altogether. But what is Zion Williamson's value at this point? What team would trade for Zion Williamson at this point? Would the Pelicans even trade Zion Williamson at this point? Probably not. But I have to admit, this is one of the most difficult situations in the entire NBA. Because with Zion Williamson, the Pelicans are clearly a buzzsaw, a team that you do not want to face, that plays very physical and ferocious defense and has a very physically imposing star player on offense, and a very lengthy second option in Brandon Ingram, and a player that could score in multiple ways in CJ McCollum. This team was constructed remarkably. David Griffin did a wonderful job constructing this team. The issue is Zion Williamson's health. Is it an issue with the training staff? Is it an issue with Zion Williamson himself? Does he like the New Orleans gumbo too much? Is it just bad luck? I mean, at some point, whenever you're getting the same result each and every year, especially 2 seasons in a row, especially when you saw the potential of this team when they all play together, something's got to change. The question is, what? What do the Pelicans have to do differently? What would you do if you were David Griffin? What would you do if you're the New Orleans Pelicans? I like to hear what you have to say. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.